Good morning, girls. Myself, Dr. Sarita. Today, we are doing a line by line explanation of the poem My Last Duchess by Robert Browning. Again, I repeat that the introduction and the background of the poem has already been given in the PDF notes shared by me on the WhatsApp groups. Please refer to them before listening to this. Let's begin the poem. That is my last duchess, painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. The speaker here points out a lifelike portrait of the last duchess that is painted on the wall. This tells us that the speaker is a duke, that his wife is dead, and that someone is listening to him describe his late wife's portrait, possibly in his private art gallery. It also makes us wonder what makes her his last duchess. For more thoughts on that phrase, check out the comments which I give later on. I call that piece a wonder now. Fra Pandolf's hands worked busily a day, and there she stands. The Duke tells his mysterious listener that the painting of the Duchess is impressively accurate. The painter, Fra Pandolf or Friar, Father Pandolf, worked hard to achieve a realistic effect. The Duke's comment, "There she stands," suggests that this is a full length portrait of the Duchess showing her entire body, not just a close up of her face. Moving on to the next line. Will it please you sit and look at her? The Duke asks his listener politely to sit down and examine the painting. But the politeness is somewhat fake, and the question seems more like a command. Could the listener refuse to sit down and look and listen? We don't think so. Continuing the poem, I said, Fra Pandolf by design, for never read strangers like you that pictured countenance, the depth and passion of its earnest glance. But to myself they turned, since none puts by the curtain I have drawn for you but I, and seems as they would ask me, if they durst, how such a glance came there. So not the first are you to turn and ask thus. The Duke explains to the listener why he brought up the painter Fra Pandolf. He says that he mentioned Pandolf on purpose by design because strangers never examine the Duchess's portrait without looking like they want to ask the Duke how the painter put so much depth and passion into the expression on the Duchess's face or countenance. They don't actually ask because they don't dare, but the Duke thinks he can tell that they want to. Parenthetically, the Duke mentions that he is always the one there to answer this question, but because nobody else is allowed to draw back the curtain that hangs over the portrait. Only the Duke is allowed to look at it or show it to anyone else. This is clearly his private gallery, and we are a little afraid of what might happen to someone who broke the rules there. Lines 13 to 15. Sir, it was not her husband's presence only called that spot of joy into the Duchess's cheek. Addressing his still unknown listener as Sir, the Duke goes on into more detail about the expression on the Duchess's face and the painting. He describes her cheek as having a spot of joy in it, perhaps a slight blush of pleasure. It wasn't just her husband's presence that made her blush in this way, although the Duke seems to believe that it should have been the only thing that would. The Duke doesn't like the idea that anyone else might compliment his wife or to do something sweet that would make her blush. We'll continue with the next few lines. Perhaps Fra Pandolf chanced to say, "Her mantle laps over my lady's wrist too much, or paint must never hope to reproduce the faint half flush that dies along her throat." Such stuff was courtesy, he thought, and cause enough for calling up that spot of joy. The Duke imagined some of the ways that Fra Pandolf might have caused the Duchess to get that spot of joy in her face. He might have told her that her mantle, her shawl, covered her wrist too much, which is the Renaissance equivalent of saying that your skirt is away too long. Or he might have complimented her on the becoming way that she flushes, telling her that paint must never hope to reproduce the beautiful effect of her skin and coloring. The Duke thinks the Duchess would have thought that comments like this, the normal flirtatious courtesy that noble men would pay to noble women, were cause enough to blush. Strangely, the Duke seems to believe the blushing in response to someone like Fra Pandolf was a decision, not an voluntary physical reaction. Notice that the Duke also seems to infuse his comments with a judgmental tone. Continuing to the next few lines. She had a heart, how shall I say, too soon made glad, too easily impressed. She liked whatever she looked on, and her looks went everywhere. The Duke describes the Duchess as too soon made glad in line 22, please notice, and too easily impressed, line 23. This is his main problem with her. Too many things make her happy. The Duke is so possessive that he wants her to smile only for him, live only for him. Another way of looking at it is that she is not serious enough. She doesn't save her spot of joy for him alone, for her husband alone. She is not the discriminating snob that he wants her to be. Snob, I hope you know the meaning of snob, a person who judges others by physical standards, by outer standards. And she behaves equally with her husband and her servant and her subordinates. And this is what the Duke does not like about her. She likes everything she sees, and she sees everything. And this is what the Duke hates about his wife. Next few lines. Sir, it was all one. My favor at her breast, the dropping of the daylight in the west, the bough of cherry some officious fool broke in the orchard for her, the white mule she rode with round the terrace, all and each would draw from her alike the approving speech, or blush at least. The Duke elaborates further on Duchess's tendency to see every pleasant thing as pretty much the same. The Duke elaborates further on Duchess's tendency to see everything as the same. If he gives her a favor or mark of his esteem that she can wear, such a corsage or piece of jewelry, corsage means a piece of jewelry, she thanks him for it in the same way that she approves of a pretty sunset or a branch of cherries or her white mule. At first, the Duke suggests that she speaks of all these things equally, but then he changes his claim and admits that sometimes she doesn't say anything and just blushes in that special way. And maybe she's a little promiscuous, either in reality or more likely in Duke's imagination. Part of the problem is not just that she likes boughs of cherries, it's that some officious fool, some servant, brings them to her. An officious person is someone who pokes their nose in and starts doing things when they are not wanted. Somebody self-important who thinks they are the best person to do something even when everyone else wishes they would just butt out.